Next agenda item, and if the presentation will come up. Oh, thank you. Okay, thank you. So I wanted to provide some written information so that you could follow along. Thank you for the feedback and the suggestions. I do agree that getting the information to you guys late, and just as this information is coming late just because of the timing of acting and requiring action by March 1st. So I do acknowledge that and apologize, and so I hope this will be more effective, and plus you don't have to listen to me read to you. So just to summarize what I shared with you on Thursday, and based on your feedback, I have some additional language or different language for you to consider, but again, a summary of what is Senate Bill 763. I'm not going to read to you, but that's where it's codified, what it provides as stated, that we can employ or accept as a volunteer a chaplain. And there are no certification requirements if a chaplain is hired or allowed to volunteer. Senate Bill 763 also has another requirement, which is why I'm coming to you, that you have to take a vote on whether or not to adopt a policy authorizing the employment or accepting as a volunteer a chaplain. So based on the feedback, the administrative recommendation for the things that I shared, as I said, looking at the budget moving forward, the administrative recommendation is not to create a new personnel position. However, I do want to acknowledge, Dr. Blassingame and I talked back and forth. As I read the law, I believe that we need to be clear that even if we're not adopting a policy, that we still allow faith-based leaders, including chaplains, to volunteer or serve in another capacity for which they're qualified. But I heard her feedback, and I want to offer this revised language, which would be clear, and I even think Ms. Heineman was kind of asking for some more clear language, so it's really both of you, where in DP local, we would add the section school chaplains and state, because in legal, and I'm glad Dr. Blassingame asked us to pull that because it hadn't gone through our adoption process yet, but it is actually a restatement of the law in legal, so then this companion heading would make sense in the local, and it would state that we have not created, or by this policy and the personnel provision, the district has not created the position of a school chaplain, but a chaplain or other faith-based leader may be considered for any other position for which, he or she qualifies, is the summary. And so that is what I heard based on feedback. That's what I heard for one option. And then based on specifically talking with Dr. Blassingame and taking her feedback during the meeting, I have option B for you all to consider, which would be to create the position of a school chaplain. We would need to determine their specific support services and programs in accordance with the law. We would need to put in an exhibit, and I would need to bring that back to you for approval. And then I think we would also want to clarify, because I do think the law requires it, that again, otherwise qualified individuals, including those who may be a faith-based leader, are eligible for employment for any position which they qualify. And the companion to that would be the volunteer policy. Again, talking about mentors and global volunteers. I talked about what each of those were on Thursday. I won't go over that again, but we would state the district has not, if you vote for option A, the district has not created the position of a school chaplain, but we do allow qualified chaplains or other faith-based leaders to serve as mentors, and the companion language for global volunteers. And a little bit different here on option B. If you adopted DP local option B and we created a position of school chaplain, then I would not recommend creating a volunteer position. We just simply wouldn't, we don't do that. You wouldn't want to have a paid position, then also have volunteers in the same position. And so I would recommend that if you choose option A, but then you want to allow volunteer chaplains, then you would only look at option B for GKG. I hope that makes sense. And again, the language would be that we have not created a personnel position, but we may accept as a volunteer a chaplain mentor to provide support service, et cetera, for students. And then really the global volunteer language would need to read like the other, which is that if you were qualified, otherwise qualified, then you could serve as a global volunteer. Anybody have any questions? Does that make it easier as we were talking through the language to hopefully have that with you? I've also given you a hard copy in front of you, so you don't have to crane your neck up at the screen. But hopefully that makes it easier for people at home and in the audience to understand what we were talking about. So breaking it down, again, based on feedback, option A for DP would be not to create a position, but to be clear, because I do believe that the way the provision reads, I would like to clarify that we will allow otherwise qualified individuals, even if they happen to be, you know, a faith-based leader, to either be employed in a position as a guidance counselor, you know, in another position, or as a volunteer or a mentor.
You done, Marnie?
Yes.
Any questions for Marnie this time?
Let me go back to an interpretation of the statute. SB 763 also requires that each board of trustees of a school district take a record vote by March 1st, 2024 on whether to adopt a policy authorizing a campus or the district to employ or accept as a volunteer a chaplain. As you're reading that, Marnie, can we make a choice to do one or the other, or do we have to have a policy that states both our position on both employment and volunteerism?
You can do one or the other. So you have to say, like, say for, that's the point, maybe I'm make sure I'm answering the question that you're meaning to ask. That's why I was saying if you chose option B and you chose to employ, then you wouldn't have volunteer chaplains. You would have employed chaplains. So you could do either or. I think if we are not creating position of chaplain, then I believe you would need to clarify that faith-based leaders can serve in roles that they're qualified for, and they can mentor and volunteer if they're qualified.
Let me ask it another way. So we have two policies before us, a policy to DP and GKG. Could we take no action on DP and not address the employment component of it at all, and only just address GKG, and would that be in compliance with state law?
Well, as it reads, it is disjunctive, and so it does say or, and so you could do either.
Okay, that answers my initial questions. I'll turn.
Yes.
I will relinquish my time.
Any other questions?
Council, I have a question on the volunteer position option B. So in the language, it says the district has not created a personnel position of a school chaplain, but may accept as a volunteer a school chaplain mentor to provide support services, programs for students as determined by GKG exhibit, which shall be approved by the Board of Trustees. So can you explain a chaplain mentor? Is that them working in what is that mentor described or defined as?
That was my attempt, and I can tweak the wording if it's confusing. Looking at GKG, if we were to say we're not going to create a personnel position, but as a board, you were going to create a volunteer position, it seemed to in my mind, fit better under the mentor section versus the global volunteer. And so that's the reason I placed it there. I suppose.
So the word could be, may accept as a volunteer a school chaplain without mentor, because it's still under the mentor section, correct?
Yes, if that was more clear, yeah. I was not trying to muddy the water. I was just trying to distinguish between because in my mind, it would better fit there.
Second question is our legal policy in both of these areas, both DP and GKG, state the law, is that correct?
Both of them state the law applicable to those statutes. The SB 763 is codified in DP legal only.
So we could have a policy legal that exists, and then we could have either no policy in DP local, or would we could have clashing policy from legal to local?
Well, if there was a conflict between local and legal, obviously legal would control. But there are times where there is a statement of the law, and it's codified in the legal policy, and there's not a companion local because there's not a local decision to be made. And so, yes, we do have some provision, some policy provisions that are legal only. There are times where policy service chooses to codify in one section. EF comes to mind. Some of the First Amendment cases regarding access to both instructional and self-selected materials like library books are in EF, even though our local policy, where we choose to enumerate, because we've chosen to segregate instructional materials and library materials, so local, we address the EF legal in EFA and EFB. So there are times, just because, as I said, the policy service provider may choose to codify it in a particular section, it may be that we address some of the options that are given to us through the law, maybe in some other policy provisions as well, local policy provisions.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay, starting with agenda item 7B2, where we're looking at modifying or revising DP local. I once again question adding a heading of school chaplains when the policy is titled personnel positions. And even if you look at DP legal, it includes principals, counselors, school nurses, and other mental health provisions. I'm still challenged by adding a heading, an employee heading of school chaplains. If the board chooses not to create the position of a school chaplain, I question if there's a need to revise DP at all, going back to what Justin mentioned. If there's even a need to revise DP. Regarding 7B3, there's been the addition of the words providing supports and services for students. And so I question who's defining what those supports and services are for those volunteers. In the previous version of the policy, it was the principal. But under Senate Bill 763, the school district board defines supports and services. So for GKG, who is defining, what are the supports and services, and who will be defining them? Will it be the principal, or will it be the school board?
So I'll go back to your first question, and I'll start from the top. So DP legal, I do recommend using the word school chaplains because the law, that's the verbiage in the law, and in DP legal, that's the specific section. So in DP Legal, it says the district may employ or accept as a volunteer a chaplain to provide sports services and programs to students. So then, logically, we would then in local say, under the school chaplain's heading, the district has not created the position of a school chaplain.
Okay, I'm slow, but I'm eventually getting there. You're saying in order for us to say we're not going to create a position, we have to at least label the position.
That's my recommendation based on the requirement in Senate Bill 763 that the board state whether or not it will adopt a policy. And then in DP Legal, there is the heading school chaplains, and it says you may. So that's why logically, I just think it will be easier to find it and easier to, and the heading is, under the canons of construction, headings are informative, but the text, whether it's a law or a policy provision, the text is going to be what controls. But we can certainly talk about that, but I just wanted to explain
No.
why behind that.
That makes sense to me now. Is it an option, just as Mr. Ray asked, and I'm asking again, do we need to even revise DP at all?
Well, as we look at, and so let me just take us, back to the language. It just says that, we have to determine whether or not to adopt a policy authorizing employment or accepting as a volunteer. So what I might suggest is if we're not going to address it in DP through policy, the employment policy, and we are going to address it through the volunteer policy, I would just want to make sure that our minutes or the motion or something was just clear that it wasn't that we forgot to address. It's just we're choosing to address it through the volunteer policy.
To that point, can I offer an alternative? I know you've given us some sample motions. May I offer an alternative motion?
Yeah, at the time, I gave you motions just so it would be easier because I know it's been confusing, but the motion is whatever any trustee wants to make, and with a second, and then there's a vote. If it carries, it carries. If it, if it doesn't, then we have to have a second motion.
Okay.
So,
Would I offer that now, or would I wait until after a motion's been made and then move to amend the motion?
Well, there hasn't been, I'm just doing a presentation right now, so there's not a motion on the dais for you guys. So, yeah. But if there were a motion and then you wanted to amend it, then, we get into that fun Robert's Rules.
I know, that I'm trying to avoid that. So I guess just during my comments then, what I will share is that a motion that I would recommend making is that I move that the Cypress Fairbanks Independent School District will not adopt a policy authorizing a campus of the district or school to employ or accept as a volunteer a chaplain under Chapter 23 of the Texas Education Code.
And, I'm sorry, I didn't, so far as GKG, I didn't answer that question.
Okay.
Ms. Heineman, I apologize. So let me get to that. So, under the current GKG, there's supports and services for students. When you're talking about mentors, then that is determined, well, to a degree, somewhat through the community community engagement, thank you, the community engagement department. I mean, they're going to do the training, set the parameters, et cetera. Now, operationally, you are correct. When a volunteer shows up on the campus, then the principal's going to say, help us die cut this, or I need some additional eyes in the lunchroom, that sort of thing. If we were to consider an option where we were creating a volunteer chaplain position, then the supports and services would need to be determined by the board because that's what the law provides. So, so in summary, if it is just, if you are otherwise qualified, you can volunteer just like anyone, then that provision is as it currently reads and stands. So, does that answer the question?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes.
Question, Justin?
Yeah, they can just adopt no policy and not put in.
Julie, would you, okay, so mechanically, let me do it this way. Would you repeat the motion that you would prefer, that you would intend to make?
Oh,
Yep,
Can't do two at a time?
that's okay, that's okay. I move that the Cypress Fairbanks Independent School District will not adopt a policy authorizing a campus of the district or school to employ or accept as a volunteer a chaplain under Chapter 23 of the Texas Education Code.
So mechanically, I'm going to talk about, just mechanically, I'm going to actually talk about the subject matter itself. So mechanically, you would be addressing the employment, which would be DP. Then you would also be addressing the volunteerism, which is GKG. So you would basically have to have two separate motions in which you address because you're having one blanket motion that covers both employment and volunteerism in the same motion.
The motion, it covers the requirements of the act that was passed, of Senate Bill 763.
Okay.
Because in Senate Bill 763, it says each board of trustees of a school district shall take a record vote no later than 6 months after the effective date of the act on whether to adopt a policy authorizing a campus of the district or school to employ or accept as a volunteer a chaplain under Chapter 23 Education Code as added by this act. I literally am just taking the actual
Understood, right.
law and turning it into a motion.
So let me pivot and actually and ask you a question about the subject matter itself. Isn't a motion of that and a policy like that inherently discriminatory against chaplains?
It's specific to Chapter 23.
You're in essence saying that if you're a chaplain, that you are not going to be allowed to participate as a mentor or a volunteer? How do you,
it's not. No, it's specific to Chapter 23 of the Education Code.
So in other words, simply because it references Chapter 23 of the Education Code, that language is inherently not discriminatory against chaplains? Because you're saying that chaplains are not allowed to participate as a mentor?
No, that's not that's not at all what I'm saying at all. It is specific to Senate Bill 763. That is not that does not prevent a chaplain from serving as a volunteer or as a mentor.
I don't see
It's
how
specific
the
to
reference.
Chapter 23 of the Education Code.
I don't see how the reference to the specific education code would prohibit that language from being inherently discriminatory against somebody who happens to be a chaplain.
Do you think the language that is in the current policy is discriminatory?
The current policy doesn't reference chaplains.
Yes, because we don't discriminate against chaplains as we have chaplains and faith-based
we don't
leaders
say- we
that
don't-
serve now as mentors
We don't say
and employees.
we don't say anybody. I mean, there are some things that we don't want, registered sex offenders and things like that. But we don't discriminate against a class of people to participate in our
Correct,
schools as a mentor.
correct.
This language would, in essence, do that.
No, I disagree. No.
I just
Because
on
we're
the
not
surface,
changing.
It would do that.
Well, and Marnie can fill this in, but if we're not changing, if there's no changes to DP local or to GKG, if they're not discriminatory now, they're
so-
not being changed, so they would continue to not be discriminatory.
The motion that you're making, where would it be in policy? Would it be under DP? Would it be under GKG? Where the
It's
motion?
not under a policy. It would not change the policies. So policies would stand as they are now.
So you're making a motion, but we have to actually make a policy change, and we may need some clarification from Marnie on that. We have to actually have a policy change per state law.
No, I'm moving that we not adopt a policy. I'm moving that we do not change policy.
So,
That is what my motion says. That we do not change DP local, that we do not change GKG,
in
because
essence,
they are not
in essence, what you're
discriminatory.
saying is you want basically no action taking place on the current agenda items that we have.
I am saying that according to Senate Bill 763, it says each board of trustees shall take a record vote on whether to adopt a policy. I'm saying we will not adopt a policy.
But we actually, anyway, I'll go ahead and relinquish my time because
Okay.
I know Dr. Blasingame wants to speak.
So Marty, can you answer that question, please?
So what I would suggest, because when you read it, I had the same sort of reaction as Mr. Ray, because that's kind of what I've been saying all along. The language is so broad. What I would suggest is that, like, to the end of your sentence or something, like, in the role of a chaplain. Because that's the struggle I've always had with the language, is because we've never engaged in viewpoint discrimination. And so that's why I thought, well, since this law is saying you have to adopt one way or the other, say if you're going to adopt a policy, I thought it was just because of the confusion that the law may create, that's the reason I was suggesting that we clarify in our policy that if you are otherwise qualified, we are not going to exclude you based on you having a, biblical viewpoint. And so I understand what you're saying, and if it were the motion and the action were to be, we are taking a vote saying we are not adopting any policy, that would satisfy the law, but I would respectfully say that I think we need to be clear that that's only in the role of a school chaplain. And I think that would address what Mr. Ray is getting
That makes sense.
at. Okay.
I would just read the law again. I think we're missing a key word, which is an affirmative word called authorizing. So it says, each Board of Trustees of a school district shall take a record vote not later than 6 months after the effective date of this act on whether to adopt a policy authorizing. So that's yes. So the policy is saying yes, they can. Vote up or down. Everyone says yes or no on the policy authorizing. So it's not saying on a policy that says yes or no. It's saying you either say yes or no to a policy authorizing the district to employ or accept as a volunteer chaplain in the chaplain role. So this is a yes down vote, a yes no vote on a policy authorizing. So to me, I would like to go ahead and throw out a motion. Maybe, I don't know if discussion's ended, but I would like to make a motion myself then that just lets us do just what the law says.
Can you hold just 1 second until we get all the questions answered that you can?
Sure, thank you,
You
sir.
can go first. It's fine. Any questions?
So do we have to break out employee? Would you advise Marnie to break out employee first and then go, and then obviously have a policy for volunteer as well?
That's what I recommended, to attempt to address it again because of the breadth of the language and wanting to be clear that we are still going to continue the practice of non-discrimination. But as it reads, Dr. Blassingame just read it aloud. It is true. I mean, the law says that you have to take a vote on whether to adopt a policy that authorizes the employment or accepting as a volunteer a chaplain in the role of chaplain, to be clear. So if you were to say, I am going, we are taking a vote, I'm trying to think of crafting a motion that would address one, not the other. But if you were to affirmatively address one, then you would not have to address the other. Does that make sense? Because if you can either employ or accept as a volunteer. So as I was sharing with Mr. Ray, it is dispositive.
I guess that's one of my questions is, okay, so we can't discriminate based on viewpoint. What are the requirements to be a counselor right now? What are the requirements?
I may have to lean into Mr. Sampson, but I believe, yeah, I was just going to say, I believe in addition to the teacher certification, you have to have a master's degree and at least 2 years of experience as a classroom teacher. So it is a rigorous, but I guess I have Ms. Cole within my eyesight. I shouldn't have made Mr. Franklin come all the way down, but is that right, Franklin or Ms. Cole? Okay, looky there.
So what you're suggesting is if a chaplain meets all the requirements to be a counselor, that we cannot discriminate against not hiring them. Is that correct?
Yes, based on the fact that they, are a faith-based leader on the weekends. So, am I answering?
And then I guess the other question I had, because just for clarity, you're saying if we hire this person as a counselor, he just so happens to be a chaplain, but we can't do a volunteer situation as well for chaplains?
What I was saying is, and I'm sorry I wasn't more clear, talking about the different options. If we were, as a board, and then subsequently as a district, were to create a position of school chaplain as a personnel position, I would not recommend creating a volunteer position for the exact same thing. Like, we don't have paid guidance counselors and then volunteer guidance counselors. That would just be inconsistent, and I wouldn't recommend that from an employment standpoint.
Makes sense.
That's
Thank
what
you.
I was trying to
That's-
convey.
Thank you for providing clarity.
Go ahead, Natalie.
Actually, I would like to question that you went on for a little bit last meeting about budget as a reason why we wouldn't look at this policy that the law is requiring us to look at and take a yes/no vote on authorizing them. And so I would say that the budget is tight. So to me, they are completely discrete. That's why they're in discrete policies, that you should be able to hire a chaplain. And if we can't afford to pay chaplains because of the budget year, then we should be able to allow volunteer chaplains, and they're not mutually exclusive. It might be that someone like the gentleman I mentioned at Booker T. Washington High School, who chose to donate his time to the school, should be able to do that. If one year was, the legislature came through with some great funding and we were able to pay someone to do it, I would say that those are not mutually exclusive, and I'm not sure how legally we would decide they were.
First, I didn't mean to go on quite a bit about the budget. I was trying to give you the basis for, or one of the bases for the recommendation. And second, what I'm sharing is that if we have a paid position, if we create a position and we have people employed in that position, I do not recommend for a variety, I could call Sharita up here, for a variety of employment perspective reasons, not to have one class of employees who are paid doing a job and one class of a position of volunteer doing the same job. So that is an operational recommendation, and so that's not what I would recommend. If the board were to want to do that, then we would just do our best to figure it out and put parameters in place that would, address, maybe some of the employment concerns that we might have. But if you were to do a paid position, or excuse me, if you were to choose not to do a paid position, but only do the position as a volunteer position, then that would not have the same conflict.
Well, I think one of our speakers laid out actually a good list of qualifications that I agreed with wholeheartedly as far as what would be. And so to me, there may be some differences. I think the rules and the parameters around proselytization and all the other things that this is to offer support and presence for kids. And so I think there could be some differences in how a volunteer is lined up as far as their qualifications and their training than an employee. And then those are different enough to where you can consider them as separate classes within the HR and the volunteer protocols. Is that legally possible?
Yeah, I mean, we just have to figure it out, wouldn't we, Sharita? So that's what.
I would have to highly advise against having two classes of employment, because what happens when someone files a complaint that we didn't hire them under what they wanted, or maybe they were volunteering and they go back on us about money that they think they're owed? That would be my main concern operationally, because what if someone volunteered to be a counselor in our district and met all the qualifications for a counselor, but we didn't actually hire that person, then came back and made a claim against us that once we brought them in as a volunteer, that we had effectively employed them and we misrepresented. I just think it creates other problems if you do it that way.
Well, I have a question on that. We're looking to build an incredible volunteer program. We have 13,000 kids who didn't reach approaches, right? So if we do volunteers to come in and teach them how to read, we give them training on how to teach our children, we give them the best reading recovery and science of teaching reading and whatever other training, would that be the same kind of issue, that a volunteer is teaching reading to our children? And they could come back and say they should have a teacher job?
No, because they're a volunteer, and they
don't
understand
have
that
a
they're a volunteer, and we don't have a paid category of volunteers.
And we don't also have a
Sorry, Doug.
qualification, though, either, that they be teachers in the first place to be a volunteer.
So then we could fix this through how we look at that volunteer role, and it's how we define it?
Fix what? Sorry.
In order to answer those human resources concerns about how we would then have a policy for hire chaplains and a separate policy or position of a volunteer chaplain.
I said if that's the decision of the board, we would, do our best to figure it out. I don't recommend it, but But that's, I mean, you guys get paid the big bucks to make those decisions, not me, so.
All right, question over here from Justin, or Lucas, I'm sorry.
I'm not really sure who to direct this question to. How is can someone, I know this, but I want it set on record. So from a mentor assignment perspective, what does that process look like?
Parent permission.
For children, I mean, like a mentor for schools.
Like how is that arranged? Because I know that mentors sign up and then there's a assignment process that happens at the school or in the admin. How is that process formed? How is that done?
Hi, I'm Dawn Tryon, Director of Community Engagement, and I'm glad you asked. Currently I want to state that we have over 35 churches that have adopted a campus and currently work with our schools. And many of those churches, the congregation provides mentors. So we already have really great relationships with some amazing faith-based leaders. But our mentor program is offered. I train mentors once a month. Our mentors register online on our website. In that instance, their account through Raptor is put on hold, and then they are required to take a 1-hour training with the Community Engagement Department. And then after that training, we release the hold in Raptor, and we email the mentor liaison. Every campus has a mentor liaison, and we email that liaison letting them know that this person has been trained and is ready to serve. And we also ask our mentors what level they prefer and what campus they prefer, if it's near their job or where they work, or it's near their church or their house. So we give them lots of information about locations and schools and opportunities. Yes.
Isn't there also a background check? And also, does the parent give permission?
Yes, great question. Both are true, yes. So when they register through the application system online, it prompts an automatic background check. And so they sit in a holding pattern until that background check is clear from HR. And then once it's clear, we get that email and we invite them to the monthly training. So we want to get mentors on campus every month. We don't do them just in the fall. We're constantly seeking and looking for and recruiting new amazing mentors. And so we're always facilitating that training. But yes, background check. And then what was your second question?
Parent permission is also part of the process, correct?
Yes, part of the process, yes. Parent has to get permission. The liaison would send home the letter to the parent, letting them know that there will be an adult working with your child 30 minutes a week during the instructional day, only on the campus, to serve your kiddo. And so that permission is granted and that relationship begins.
Also, that there's no personal information shared. For example, out of Manatee High School, I never had her phone number, she never had mine, so there's also some protections that way, correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We have mentors that have been with students since 2nd or 3rd grade, and you do develop that relationship with a parent. That can be obtained, those phone numbers or information, through that liaison. So that mentor might say, I'd love to speak with Jenny's mom. That mentor liaison would have to call and say, may I give her your email? And if the mom says, no, I'd like it to be, that's fine. But there are instances where the mentor would like to engage that parent, and that relationship strengthens.
So I think one of the questions in front of the board right now is that, is there a separate class of mentor
A separate,
for being a chaplain? Correct?
If you were to adopt option B for GKG,
Correct.
then that would be what the board was deciding.
Got it. And what I'm hearing right now, Ms. Tryon, is that you currently have, 35 churches that are currently participating in the mentor program?
yes,
And people from those churches, people identify and say, I would like to help some kids. They pass the background check, they go through the training, they understand what they can and can't do, they go out.
100%.
Okay.
We just went to Prince of Peace a week ago and trained about 15 retired ladies
Yep.
to join us, and we're super excited. And we went to them and brought the program to them and walked them through registration, and yes.
Yep. Yeah. My wife is a mentor, and it has been really just listening and helping this little boy learn how to read and asking him questions about his day. But it's been time that he finds valuable. And, she got a hug last week for the first time in, I think, 5 or 6 months, made her day, and has communications with the dad. But it's a program that offers value just to listen and be heard and help the teachers be able to reach those kids, so.
Yes, and Natalie, our mentors do not tutor. So the reading and the math and biology, chemistry, that's all left to the teachers. And so they're there as an emotional support to listen and encourage and,
Yeah, and let me clarify, the student wanted to read and show her what.
yes, that's fabulous, yes.
Right, so let me clarify, she's not instructing.
Yes.
I heard the mumbles in the audience, yes.
No.
I'm not saying that.
But while you're at the mic, let's build it. Let's build the tutoring program. It's going to take the entire city, all these people at home ready to work with kids so that we can build, increase our reading scores with free labor with a limited budget that's ahead. I'm wondering if we are ready, I would like to make a motion if it's that time or not.
Oh, Justin has a question, then Dr. Killian,
Oh, and then Todd does.
then Todd.
Ms. Tryon?
Not done yet.
Mrs. Tryon? Quick question. Do we currently have chaplains that are already volunteering in this school district?
I couldn't say for sure. We have faith-based leaders, we have congregations coming, so do we ask them their titles? No.
Thank you.
Marnie, just procedurally, if anybody wanted to not pursue the employment option and wanted to focus solely on the volunteer aspect, and in essence wanted to reaffirm our existing policy of allowing chaplains to serve as volunteers and mentors, which one of this proposed language, A and B, would be the best standalone option?
Option A on both.
Okay. So, just to be clear, if a board member wanted to pursue an option in which we did not pursue the employment, but simply wanted to reaffirm our established relationship with the faith-based communities and pastors and chaplains volunteering, we could support option A, probably no motion, and the way it is on the agenda, that would be no motion on DP, and then we would make a specific motion on GKG under option A. Does that procedurally make sense?
Yes, so I would say the motion would be to remove DP from the agenda and to take no action on it, and then to adopt option A for GKG.
Okay. Let me just kind of, I'm going to go ahead and cut to the chase and just give everybody my opinion, not making a motion, but just my opinion on our recommended course of action. You know, as I may have alluded to Thursday night, I alluded to just now as well, you know, the faith-based community has been engaged in Sci-Fair for many years. I'm discussed last Thursday night how I was engaged with Fellowship of Christian Athletes, and I remember our youth pastor being on campus. Sci-Fair schools and the Sci-Fair district has had a long-standing engagement with our religious organizations and our faith-based community, and that is a good thing. I encourage pastors, I encourage religious leaders to volunteer, to mentor, to stay engaged. A number of our speakers tonight spoke about the very difficult set of circumstances our students are dealing with right now, and they need as much help as they can get. The things that I do want to be clear that everybody needs to understand, and I've heard some comments this evening, there is no option on the table right now, nor there has been any discussion that we are going to replace counselors with chaplains. I have not heard any of my colleagues express that. I don't support that, nor does the language before us reiterate that. We do not have before us a plan to have unqualified chaplains or any person serve as a school counselor. In the instance where a person is a chaplain, and they also happen to have the credentials and the education and the experience to be a chaplain, we are not going to have viewpoint discrimination, and that person can serve as a counselor. Where I'm at on the motions before us this evening, I think that the best option for us is to continue our existing engagement with the faith-based community. I believe that it's in our best interest to continue having chaplains and people engage in our community as volunteers and mentors. I would recommend my colleagues to support GKG option A and take no action on DP this evening.
Dr. Killian, you have a comment?
Just had a question for Karen, actually. So in terms of our school safety money, because it's been brought up about school safety money potentially being used for this, how much money do we get again?
We're not getting much money. You're talking the school safety allotment? Or
Yes.
okay, we are going to be getting about 1.3 million additional dollars based on the additional 28 cents per student and the 15,000 per campus.
So $15,000 per campus plus 28 cents, which brings us up to $1, what per kid?
It's not very, yeah, it's not very much. So it's, yeah, like I said, it's about 1.3 million additional.
And we're already supposed to employ police officers.
Correct.
Or whatever with that, yeah, or some kind of armed personnel. Okay. So this may just be a crazy observation, but I've always been told if you want something to happen, you incentivize it financially, correct? So there's no incentive to do this and hire chaplains because there's no money for it. So it was so important to the legislature with a 30-something billion surplus, they passed a bill with no money attached to it, basically. Okay, that's all I wanted to say.
Seeing we've exhausted all the questions, at this time I'll take a motion.
I would like to make a motion that we, it's going to be personnel positions, option B, because we need to obligate, the law says that we shall vote yes or no. Our speaker said just vote yes or no. So policy option for consideration, option B, school DP local, school chaplains. The district has created the position of a school chaplain to provide support services and programs for students as determined by DP exhibit, which shall be approved by the Board of Trustees. Additionally, a chaplain or other faith-based leader may be considered for any other position in the district for which the chaplain or other faith-based leader qualifies.
So can you put that in a motion, please?
I move that we accept and vote on option B, which was just read. DP Locan, option B, which maybe is on the screen. That's A. Can we please move it to B?
And also the revisions for CQC as well?
I'm only handling one.
We have to do the whole thing.
I'll do, yes. Actually, I would have and I make a motion that we, for consideration, school volunteer program option A, under GKG local. The first paragraph will stay as stands. For purposes of this policy, a mentor engages in regular one-to-one interaction with a student, providing supports and services for students through the volunteer program. The district has not created the position of chaplain, so I would change the language there to say the district has created the position of chaplain, but qualified chaplains or other faith-based mentors may serve as mentors. In the second paragraph, for purposes of this policy, a global volunteer participates in volunteer activities, providing supports and services at a campus at which the volunteer does not have a child or grandchild enrolled. The district has created the position of a school chaplain, and qualified chaplains or other faith-based leaders may serve as global volunteers in the chaplain role, adding in the chaplain role at the end of that line, and making sure the not created is created.
Can I have a point of order from our parliamentarian? Under this, there's a motion on the floor. If a couple of scenarios. If this motion fails to pass because lack of a second, are we allowed for a secondary motion?
Yes.
If this motion has a second but also fails in an up and down vote, can we then, will there be some sort of motion for reconsideration, or would we be allowed to just continue working on that particular agenda item?
You would continue working on the agenda item until there was a motion that passed.
Very good.
And a
Thank you.
secondary motion. Yes, sir.
So just to clarify, you're going to move to adopt the proposed revisions to CQC local as recommended, and move the board revise DP local option B, and revise GKG option B, if I heard that correctly.
No, that's GKG option A or B. Let me see if, sorry, maybe it's B, yes.
B.
Yes, we'll provide, yes, in the role of mentor, though, under the global volunteer.
So again, just to make sure we have this correct and so everybody understands, you're going to move to adopt the proposed revisions for CQC local as recommended. I also moved that the board,
L.
CQC
No.
local,
No, I'm just looking off the
Sorry.
sheet, forgive me.
B,
Yes.
C on here, apologize.
DP, local, option
CQB local as recommended. Also move that the board adopt DP local revised option B and revise GKG local option B. If I said that correctly, Marnie, is that right?
Yes, and
As amended.
as further revised by Dr. Blasingame. She added some additional language on the GKG, but yes, you are correct. Because we do need to also address the policy that nobody's asked any questions about.
Cybersecurity policy. Sorry, Karen. May I get a second, please?
what's before us again, I'm sorry?
So it's option B and option B on this piece of. Option B and option A, sorry.
We'll clarify, it's option B on personnel. DP. DP local, option B, that's school chaplains. The district has created the position of a school chaplain to provide support, services, and programs for students as determined by DPE exhibit, which shall be approved by the Board of Trustees. Additionally, a chaplain or other faith-based leader may be considered for any other position in the district for which the chaplain or other faith-based leader qualifies. And option B on GKG local. For the purposes of this policy, a mentor engages in a regular one-to-one interaction with the student. The district has created, so take out not, has created a personnel position of a school chaplain, but may accept as a volunteer school chaplain without the word mentor, school chaplain, to provide support, services, and programs for students as determined by GKG exhibit, which shall be approved by the Board of Trustees. For purposes of this policy, a global volunteer participates in volunteer activities at a campus to which the volunteer does not have a child or grandchild enrolled. A qualified chaplain or other faith-based leader may serve as a chaplain or a global volunteer. A mentor or a global volunteer as a mentor or a global volunteer in the chaplain role. Added. Is it?
Option B is saying there is going to be a school chaplain. Option B, GKG, says that the district has not created a personnel position of school chaplain.
Well, I read option A and I changed the language to has
Yes, you changed the
created,
language.
so.
And I have the revisions that you proposed down, so Holly, if it passes, I can get over there and make sure you've got it
Want to
down.
read it?
No, I got it. But, well, unless the rest of the board needs to understand. And so what Dr. Blasingame is proposing is option, let me just do this for clarity. Option B for DP, which would be to create the chaplain position and then also continue to allow others to be hired in roles for which they're qualified. And then option B, which would be to allow in addition to a personnel position, to also create a specific volunteer position for mentors and global volunteers in the chaplain role, effectively.
Hearing a motion, may I get a second? The motion fails. Any other motions?
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion at this time. I motion that we approve Local Technology Resources CQB and that we approve CKG Option A under Community Relations Volunteer School Program.
Just for clarity, the motion is to adopt the proposed revisions to CQC local. And then I'm assuming move to remove DP local and the consideration of employment of chaplains from the agenda, and then adopt revised GKG local option B.
A.
Sorry, A. I thought I had it down. That affirms the ability of chaplains to serve as volunteers and mentors in the
And
district.
just for clarification, you said CQC, but it's CQB.
Oh, my apologies. Thank you.
So the motion on the table is that I move that the board adopt the proposed revisions to CQB local as recommended. Also move that the board remove the recommended revised DP local option and revise GKG option B.
A.
You said A? Sorry, A, sorry, local.
I'm the one that messed that up, Scott. Mr. Henry, that was my fault.
Does everyone understand the motion?
No.
Okay, then
Sorry, I don't either.
Can you put up option A on GKG? It's up there, and that's the one we're voting on basically all. That's it.
If I may, Mr. President, the reason behind my motion was that it would simply basically preserve our existing policy in which we allow chaplains to participate as volunteers and mentors. If a chaplain wanted to be a school counselor, I don't think we're not even addressing the concept of chaplains being uncertified school counselors. In essence, basically what we're saying is that this motion is intended to preserve our existing policy allowing chaplains to be volunteers and mentors in our school district.
Clarity.
so we would need to determine if there was a second before we had discussion.
Is there a second?
I second.
Here in a second, are there any questions?
Yes.
I just want to, for clarity, the word "not" is not struck. Is that correct?
So as I understand, the motion before the board is to adopt CQB, I apologize for misspeaking, CQB as recommended, to remove DP local and the consideration of the employment of chaplains from the agenda, and to adopt GKG option A as revised and shown here on the screen. Does that answer your question, Mr. LeCompte?
Yes.
And Marnie, just, can you give me a little support on this? My assessment of supporting option A as a standalone option would indeed reinforce and recommit us to our existing policy of allowing chaplains to be volunteers and mentors in our schools.
Yes, absolutely. Some of the first language version we talked about in policy committee I had, and the district hereby this policy codifies its existing practice, and then I decided to be a little less verbose. So, but yes, that was originally, I had in there to, that this will memorialize what we currently do. So you are correct.
And council, can you please discuss why removing DP from consideration makes sense if we're making a statement that, A, we're not going to create a role for it, B, we're not going to discriminate against a faith-based leader as being an employer if they are otherwise, being an employee for a role for which they are otherwise qualified. Can you walk through that, please?
Yes, and so by removing DP, we are, DP legal does give the option, if we're silent in DP local, that's where we would have added that position. So by taking it out and leaving it silent, you are choosing not to create through policy that position. But because of how, I believe how broad the language is, I do recommend, and that's what I said earlier, I do recommend that we clarify so that there's no question that we are going to continue our current practice of welcoming and having great support for our local faith-based leaders as mentors and global volunteers.
Ready to vote?
Any other questions? Lucas, you're on still?
Can I make an amendment?
What's that?
I'd like to amend that we accept option B.
Well, we already got a motion on the table, so we either have to vote or not vote.
Okay.
So,
Are we clarifying, does this say that the qualified chaplains or other faith-based leaders may serve as global volunteers in the chaplain role as is current practice?
No, it does not state that, and that's not what the motion includes. This is our current practice, and we're clarifying it in policy.
So have we even answered the law, which says that we have to consider for
Yes, we've
employment,
had-
yes, no, or for volunteer, yes, no? In your opinion, legal counsel?
I think we've been very clear and had discussion about whether or not to adopt a policy. We posted for the policy. We've now removed it through the motion to say we're not going to adopt a policy that creates a chaplain position. So absolutely, we've addressed the law.
It actually says it in the second paragraph.
and Marty, just for clarification, this is a 2 reading, correct? So we have 1 more reading next month, is that correct?
Yes, and that's what we
go through
discussed
another
is
bite of the
that,
apple?
yes, this is what we've talked about and this is what's proposed. And then we're going to have another month where we will, take input and, reach out to some specific groups for feedback. And then we will do this all over again in March.
And we're in
get an
compliance.
amen?
I just want to make sure that we didn't have to have an official vote by March 1st.
Well, this is a record vote.
This is a record vote.
Okay, all right.
And
Yeah, this is a record vote.
with
And
that being
then-
said, we'll now take a vote. Please raise your right hand based on the motion at hand. All in favor, all opposed? Abstentions, 2?
All right, are you guys voting?
Abstain.
Okay.
2 abstentions,
Okay.
and then 1, 2, 3. Holly got that?
Did you get that, Holly? Because we'll just need to, yes, and so we need to record how each person voted, which we do in the minutes anyway. Okay.
Okay, the next fun event, 7C.